Hello everyone, my name is Angel Rivera and I'm a developer advocate for CircleCI. So today I'm going to speak to you all about adding CircleCI to your projects. This tutorial is intended to be for basic beginners and it's just intended to show you how to actually implement CircleCI and CI/CD pipelines into your project. What we're going to do here today is just go over a simple example application that I created. All it does is creates a Python Flask service that just displays a static web page. And it also has some unit tests that we're going to run in our pipeline to make sure that we're not pushing bad code up into our production level repos. So what I have here is a Github repo that I created a little while ago. And what's happening here is we have basically our project laid out in the repo. Again, it's a single application, running a static web page. But we definitely want to test this web page before we push it out to production. What I'm going to show you is a very simple integration into CircleCI and a very simple build and test CI/CD pipeline. So again, that we test the application. This pipeline will also save those test results to our build, right? So if we have some issues later down the road that we need to debug, and we need that artifact from an archived artifact from previous builds to help in our troubleshooting, they'll be there with every push upstream. So meaning every time you push code, these tests will run. It'll save the test results with every push within the platform. That way you have that historical value. So let's jump in real quick. I have my files already uploaded right into the project. And I've actually got them locally here as well. So you may be asking, all right, Angel, how do I get CircleCI embedded in this project? Well, there's a very simple answer to that. And the next step is going to be us just going to circleci.com. And right now I have not been logged in, right? So let's go ahead and log in, which is really simple. All it does is a auth webhook right back to GitHub, and it just authorizes the platform to monitor your repos in your project. Now, one thing about CircleCI, I'm a member of many GitHub organizations. We run off of the policy fabric from GitHub. So CircleCI doesn't maintain its own policy fabric in regards to the repos. So what we're going to do is click on Find My Punk Data GitHub handle, and there we have my projects. So in order to add your project, right, make sure you're in the organization that you want to, where your project lives, which mine is Punk Data. And then we want to go to Add Projects right here. And if you look, we have to find our projects. So I have Python Flask. It's not set up, right? If you would see a setup, if it was already set up, it would have an unfollow button. But this one's not set up, so we're going to go ahead and set that up. Now, at this point, I generally just go ahead and like to, select Python. We're just going to select Python, the language that we're using. You don't have to do this, but when you select it, it just gives you kind of a sample application, right? Or a sample CI/CD build. And generally what we do is we know that our folks, or our customers, I should say, use the platform, and they generally use, standard testing right now. If I use this configuration, it will fail. The reason why I'm going to go ahead and start building the project is because I don't have a configuration file yet. Normally what I would do is create the configuration file. And actually, let's go ahead and do that now before we actually hit start building. So let's jump back over to our project. Now, in order for you to create that linkage between CircleCI and your project so it starts monitoring it, we need to create a config file. And that config file needs to live in a specific folder that we call the .circleci folder. So let's go ahead and create that folder in our project. It's going to be called .circleci. I think I spelled that right. Yeah, awesome, cool. So once we have that folder, let's just go ahead and add a file to it. And this is where our actual pipeline instructions or pipeline syntax will live. So let's call this, we're always looking for the file called config.yml. Great, now that we have all that here, this is the beginnings of our configuration file. for our project. So to start, we always want to add the version of CircleCI's platform that we want to use. So basically what we're saying in these first lines are we're going to use version 2.1, and then we're going to create a jobs key, which is basically a list of jobs that we want to run. And the job is basically a labeled set of actions to take within your CI/CD pipeline. So let's go ahead and add that. So we have the versions, which is great. Now we're going to start adding the actual things we want, or jobs, right? Defining the jobs that we want to accomplish within our CI/CD pipeline. So first things first, within our jobs list, we need to create a label for our job. So what I want to call this job is run test, which is literally just going to run our unit tests against our code base. The next key here, which is the Docker key, that's basically telling the system where I actually want to run my code, right? So the runtime in which the code will run. And we're going to run this inside of a Docker image. Now there's 4 different executor keys is what we call them. We have Docker, obviously, right? So you have to provide an image. There's also the machine version of the executor, which basically is a full VM. If you need a little bit more horsepower, you can do that. And this Docker would then turn into a machine. We also have Mac OS, iOS. So if you're doing Mac specific applications or mobile applications for iOS, you can use that executor to test your code. And then finally, we have the newest addition for the executors is Windows based. So you can actually use a Windows core server to test your code. But right now we're doing Python, so we're going to use an image-based executor to accomplish our goals here. So once we have the label for the actual job, which is run _tests, then we've defined our executor. Next step is to actually define the steps, which are a list of things or commands that we're going to execute in this pipeline, in this run test job pipeline. So now that we have our executor defined, we're going to define the first steps in our job. So I've added the steps command here. The next command in our steps is basically checking out the code. So this is doing a git clone of the project repo, right? So obviously, right, in order for us to take some action on your code, we need to have the code. So what happens is we run this checkout command, which is an alias for a git clone, and it just basically brings that code into the executor space, which is the Docker container. Next is a run command here, right? The run block. These are the actual execution or bash executions that we're going to commit or execute inside of the image. So basically what's happening here is we're installing our Python dependencies. This request file holds all of the Python dependencies and they're pinned by version, so that you can. It's standard practice in software development that you pin your versions of your libraries so that you don't have any backward compatibility issues or any kind of future breaking changes issues where maybe they deprecate some functionality in future libraries, and that would definitely break your application for no good reason other than that you have to adjust your app to these breaking changes in the future. In any case, let's just jump back over to the config file. So we have basically taken down and installed the requirements.txt file. Now your libraries will be installed automatically into the environment, which leads us to the next step. Now this next step is basically us running our unit tests against the application. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with unit tests, they're basically tests that actually test specific components or features or functions of your application. So they're more like the atomic testing. I would definitely get into reading up and brushing up on testing, software testing and development. It's really valuable and it's going to help you in the future. But right now I'm just going to go ahead and run a quick test on my application that I've defined in this test hello world file. Again, if you want to look at what's going on, basically what's happening is we're going to set up the application to run in a test environment. Then after that, what we're going to do is ping the Flask service or the server. And we're definitely looking for a 200 response, meaning the server's okay, right? So first test is to make sure that the server's up and running, responding, with 200s. And then the next step is basically this final test and the unit test is basically just testing the greeting on the web page. Basically, what we have here is a greeting of welcome to CI/CD set in this variable, and then on the bottom here we're asserting that it's equal to whatever the value is on the web page is equal to welcome to CI/CD. If those things are true, then your test will pass and you won't have any issues. So let's close that up, close up the requirements doc, and jump back into the config.yml. So in Python, I use this test library called PyTest, which is really awesome. It does the testing for your applications, kind of in to call it test harness. So you don't have to do a lot of the jumping through the hoops of writing code and then making sure that it works. PyTest is pretty smart. It finds your tests, runs them for you, and then gives you the results. Normally the results come out in a standard output in the command line, but what we want to do is run this and then have the test results pumped out into a what we call a JUnit file, which is a standard in Java world, it stands for Java Unit Testing, and the XML file, which is good to have. You can then import that into all kinds of different testing analytical tools. But what we're focusing on is also providing test reports that are nice and readable HTML style. So there's a library called PyTest HTML, and that's what this flag is actually doing. It's saying, hey, let's go ahead and test this application. And then when we're done, we're going to pump out to the tests. We're going to create a folder called test reports and then give the PyTest report HTML file and place it in there. So now that we have the PyTest running or declared and it's going to run, we then want to save all of these test reports, right? So all of these results want to be saved with the build itself. So the next step that I'll show you is going to add the test saving capabilities that we have within CircleCI. Okay, so now that we've declared our unit test command or a run command for our unit test, I've added these two keys here. Basically, what they're doing here is basically going to store all the test results within the test folders reports that we've defined in these commands here. And then it's going to store an artifact, which is actually saving the file and pinning it to your build version so that they'll be available to anyone who looks through these pipeline builds. Now that we have that all settled, the last thing we're going to do is create our workflow definitions, which basically are how the system will take all of the different jobs in your jobs key here, right? It will take all of those jobs and orchestrate how they interact with one another, meaning the workflows controls how all of your jobs interact with one another to complete your pipeline. So let's go ahead and add a workflows build here. So now I've added our workflows definition here and basically just add a workflows key. Once that's done, then I'm going to define or give it a name, right? Give my workflow a name. I'm going to call it build and test since that's what we're going to be doing with this project. And then once you have the name, right? So this is just the name of the workflow. We're going to start defining which jobs are going to be controlled within this workflow. And right now, since we only have one job, we're going to use the run tests, obviously, right? So that's what we want to do is run some tests on this thing. And once that's done, we can save this file. And now that it's saved, remember, if we go back to our web page, we never really started the build yet, right? Because this tells you to create the file. So we actually did all of this stuff, right? And I've actually already done a little bit of the work for you for testing the application. But definitely, the next step here. So we created the CircleCI folder. We created the config.yaml file. We've populated it with actual pipeline configuration that's going to test our code and then save that test results, right, with our build. So now that we've done all that, I'm going to go ahead and the number 4 step here is to push the Git up to GitHub, right? So let's do that real quick. So now that we have I'm gonna check status, what's changed. Okay, we have an untracked file, which means the config file, right? So let's do a git commit, and then we're gonna do the actual file. Oh. And then from there, we're gonna add a message. And then we're gonna say added the CI config file to the repo. This is the first time we're doing that. Let me make sure everything's good. Yep. Oh, see? And we didn't match any files. All right, the issue is I never added the folder or the file to the project. That's why I can't see it. So see, even experienced developers have simple issues occasionally. So let's do this, git, and we're gonna add the file, right, in the folder. So since it's just a folder, we're just a quick add, so CircleCI config, right? And that should add it to our project. Let's do a git status. So now we have a new file to commit. Let's clear this out. Now we can run our git commit statement from earlier, and it should work. Right. So now we've committed. So that we've committed that file. So let's do a git commit. Oh, git status. Sorry. Go too fast sometimes. All right. So now that we have our one push ready to be one commit ready for push to be pushed up to GitHub, let's go ahead and do that. So let's do a git push. Now by doing this, we've actually pushed upstream, right? So now let's go to GitHub. Let's do a quick refresh on our project. And we should see now that we have a file, right, that's been pushed upstream, and it's a config.yaml. Now, if we take a look at CircleCI, we still haven't added this project, right? So we haven't started building. Now that we've actually did step number 4, push the changes up to GitHub, we can click the button to start building, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Now, while that's happening, just remember that you can actually do this at any point, to start building. The only issue is you're going to have a failure until you actually have a running, fully functional config file, right? And failures are fine, right? That's what CircleCI is all about. It's getting in there, checking out your code, watching it, make sure if you get failures, that's great. You're getting feedback, you fix the problems, and then move on until you get actual green builds. And look at this. So since I kind of had already done the legwork and made sure that this configuration pipeline is fully functional and the tests are good, I've got a green test, right? So this is the happy path, what we call the happy path, where you have no failures, right? Everything just works out the box. It's great. It's very rare that happens in software development, but when it does, it's a really cool thing. So what you're seeing is the happy path for this project, meaning there were no errors in my build, no errors for the test. So the application built successfully first time around. This is very hard to achieve and almost unrealistic. The reason why it worked that way is because I orchestrated this video to work that way. But it's okay if you have failed builds. It's definitely okay. It's expected. And that's the whole point of the system, is to let you know when you have issues. Then you go and fix it, and then push those fixes upstream, and then everybody's happy, right? So as you can see here, all my tests passed. But what I really wanted to show you was the other piece, right? Which is, once the tests have passed, we have now some results that are pinned to this build. So as you can see here, right, it's telling me it uploaded the test results, and then it uploaded the artifacts, which are the actual results itself. Now, if you ever want to see those results, right, for this project, take a look back. You can check here, tests, right, everything's great. And then here you have the 2 artifacts that we call artifacts, which are basically files that were saved with your build. Right here's the one that I like the most, is the Python test report. And what that did was, right, it just opened up that file that was living in the CircleCI platform. And it shows you a nice, HTML version of your test results. So it's a really nice kind of thing if you wanted to show your team. Maybe, there's some, it's just easier on the eyes, right, compared to the standard out. So that's the CircleCI onboarding and test results piece. I think it's really easy to get you up and running. Again, you saw it's pretty quick. But the Python piece is definitely, unique. There's unique libraries for Python here. And I'll be doing some other videos to show how people can get onboarded easy with Node or Ruby and all the other stacks out there as time permits. Thanks for watching.